You throw away more food in a month than she spent in a year. In 1954, a woman in Wakefield fed herself on 12 shillings a week. One pot, one flame, 6 things on the larder shelf. She never wasted a penny, never served a bad meal. £700. That's how much food the average British household throws away every single year. We didn't lose those meals because they stopped working. Supermarkets spent 60 years convincing you that cooking for one is too much trouble, that convenience is progress, that ready meals are normal. They needed that knowledge gone. Number 17. Fed a woman through a Yorkshire winter on 4 shillings. Number 8, Cambridge scientists recently confirmed, is more nutritionally complete than anything in the chilled aisle. 25 one-pot meals for seniors living alone. They survived rationing, they survived poverty. They'll outlast any supermarket that ever tried to replace them. We're bringing them back. Number 20, leek and potato soup. 2 leeks, 2 potatoes, a knob of butter, a stock cube, water. That is the list. Everything into the pot together. Leeks sliced rough. Potatoes diced without peeling because the skin is where the goodness sits. Cold water poured over. Stock cube crumbled in. Brought to a simmer and left alone for 25 minutes until the potato collapses at the edge of a fork. Then a wooden spoon pressed against the side of the pot. Not a blender, not a processor. A wooden spoon and 2 minutes. Because a soup with texture is a soup worth eating. A smooth paste from a machine is what hospitals serve. The National Food Survey of 1953 recorded leeks as the 3rd most commonly purchased vegetable in Welsh and Northern English working-class households, after potatoes, after onions. They cost almost nothing, and they kept on the shelf through the coldest months. A pot made on Monday lasted 2 days in a cool kitchen and tasted better on the 2nd day. Everything settled overnight in a way no amount of active cooking can replicate. The smell of leeks softening in butter before the water goes in. Not sharp, not heavy, warm and faintly sweet. The smell of something being looked after. Covent Garden leek and potato soup costs £4.50 a carton. 400 millilitres. Your nan made a 3-day supply for under 30 pence. Hers had actual pieces of potato in it. Pieces you could feel. Pieces that told you someone had stood at a board and cut them. Number 19, corned beef and vegetable stew. A tin of corned beef broken apart with a fork. Rough chunks. Potatoes, carrots, 1 onion, all diced, dropped into the pot with just enough water to cover. The corned beef goes in for the last 10 minutes only. It is already cooked. It needs warming through, not destroying. White pepper, nothing else. In 1958, a 12-ounce tin of corned beef cost 9 pence. The National Food Survey recorded it as one of the 5 most purchased tinned goods in working-class households throughout the 1950s. 1 tin, a pot of vegetables, 2 days of dinners. That was the calculation. That was always the calculation. The corned beef dissolves slightly at the edges as it warms, thickens the broth. The potatoes absorb the salty, beefy liquid. The carrots stay firm and push a faint sweetness through. It stops the whole thing tasting flat. 1 pot, 1 tin opener, 1 wooden spoon, 3 things to wash. She didn't call it a stew. She called it tea. If this is making you wish you'd asked your grandmother more questions, you're not alone. Subscribe. Number 18. Minestrone with whatever is in the cupboard. This is not a recipe. It is a method. Everything that needs using goes into the pot. The heel of a cabbage, the last 2 carrots, half a tin of tomatoes, a handful of pasta, or 2 tablespoons of rice. 1 onion, always an onion. A stock cube in a pint of boiling water, poured over. Lid on, 30 minutes. It stops smelling like ingredients, it smells like dinner. A 1949 Women's Institute handbook described this under making the most of the week's vegetables. The quality of the result, it noted, depended on the stock and the cook's willingness to taste and adjust. Salt, a little vinegar, if it tasted flat. She didn't measure, she tasted, she adjusted. The vegetables passed their best. The pasta at the back of the cupboard. The tomatoes that need using today. Everything goes in, everything comes out as dinner. That is not improvisation. That is a system. And it is a system that has never once required a subscription box or a 20-minute delivery window. Number 17. Chicken thighs with root vegetables. 2 chicken thighs, skin on, into the pot, on a high heat, skin side down, left completely alone for 4 minutes. Do not touch them. Do not press them. Do not lift the edge to check. 4 minutes. The skin is gold. It pulls from the bottom cleanly. Turn them once. Carrots, parsnip, onion in around them, roughly chopped, no precision required. Stock or water halfway up the thighs. Lid on, low heat, 40 minutes. The skin renders as it cooks. The fat runs into the liquid and becomes the sauce without any additional instruction. When the lid comes off, the thighs are falling tender and the broth beneath them is rich and golden and smelling of Sunday in the middle of the week. Chicken thighs cost a fraction of breast meat in 1960. The inferior cut, they were called. Food scientists studying slow-cooked poultry later confirmed what every post-war cook already understood by feel. The higher fat content means it stays moist through long, gentle cooking. Breast meat goes dry and stringy. The cheaper cut produced the better result. It always did. The laboratory just took longer to say so. Number 16. Butterbean and bacon soup. 2 rashers of smoked back bacon, chopped small. Into the pot first until the fat runs and the edges catch. 1 onion, diced, softened in the bacon fat. A tin of butter beans, drained. A stock cube in a pint of hot water, poured over. Half the beans mashed against the side of the pot to thicken the broth. 20 minutes on a low heat. Lid off. The smokiness from the bacon runs through everything. Without it, the soup is pleasant. With it, the soup has character. That is the difference between a bowl you finish and a bowl you remember. Butter beans were a larder staple throughout the post-war decades. A dried bag cost a few pence and produced more protein per portion than most cuts of meat at the same price. The tinned version, available from the mid-1950s, meant the soaking stage was already done. Dinner was 30 minutes from a standing start. Nutritionists at the University of Cambridge confirmed that legumes paired with even small quantities of cured meat cover every essential amino acid the body requires. Working-class cooks in Lancashire and Yorkshire had been producing nutritionally complete one-pot meals from a tin of beans and 2 rashers of bacon for decades before anyone put it in an academic paper. They were decades behind. Number 15. Oxtail broth with barley. 2 or 3 oxtail joints into the pot with a chopped onion, a carrot, a handful of pearl barley, a bay leaf, cold water to cover by 2 inches, brought to the boil, skimmed, then the lowest possible simmer. Lid on, 3 hours. The 3 hours are the recipe, don't rush them. The cartilage and bone give up their collagen, the barley swells and thickens, the liquid turns dark and dense and trembles when you move the pot. Fish out the bones, strip the meat back in. In the 1950s, oxtail cost 3p a pound in Sheffield because nobody with money wanted it. The same cut now fetches £12 a kilo. Gastropub menus call it a forgotten cut. £14 a portion. It was never forgotten. It was moved to the back of the cabinet while more expensive cuts sat at the front. The women buying it for 3p were eating better. They had always been eating better. The restaurant menus just made it official. Number 14. Egg and tomato shakshuka. A tin of chopped tomatoes, an onion, a clove of garlic, a teaspoon of cumin, a pinch of chili. Into the pot. Simmered for 15 minutes until the sauce tightens and darkens and the smell shifts from raw tomato to something rounder and deeper, something that fills the kitchen rather than sitting on top of it. 2 hollows pressed into the surface with the back of a spoon. 2 eggs cracked directly in. Lid on, 4 minutes on a low heat until the whites set firm and the yolks stay soft and orange. Eaten from the pot with a piece of bread to clean the bottom. 2 things to wash. The 1957 survey of working-class nutrition by dietitians at the London School of Hygiene recorded eggs as the single most frequently consumed protein source in British households. More than beef, more than lamb, because they were cheap. Because 2 eggs cracked into something hot is always a meal. A Tesco finest ready meal, shakshuka, costs £4.20 and arrives lukewarm in a plastic tray. This costs under 30p and takes 20 minutes and tastes of something actually cooked. That gap has never closed. It never will. Number 13. Pea and ham soup. The ham bone from Sunday's joint or a smoked ham hock from the butcher. 6p in 1960, about £1.50 now. Still one of the best value things on any butcher's counter in Britain. Into the pot with a pound of dried split peas soaked overnight, an onion, a bay leaf, cold water to cover, simmered for 2 hours. The peas dissolve entirely into the broth. The liquid turns thick and golden. The ham threads through every spoonful, salty and soft and tasting of something that has been working for 2 hours to feed you. Split peas cost a few pence a pound in any post-war corner shop. 1 bag made enough soup to last 3 days. 3 days, 1 pot, 1 morning, done. A pot of Covent Garden split pea and ham soup costs £4 for 450 millilitres. Your nan made a 3-day supply from a bone and a bag of dried peas for under 20p. The nursery rhyme dates this dish to at least the 17th century. It has been keeping people standing through British winters longer than any ready meal manufacturer has been in business. It is simply what you make when you have a bone, a bag of peas, and enough sense to leave the pot alone. Number 12. Vegetable and lentil dahl. Red lentils do not need soaking. That is the fact that makes this dish possible on any weeknight with nothing planned. A mug of red lentils, rinsed, a diced onion, 2 cloves of garlic, a tin of chopped tomatoes, a teaspoon each of cumin and turmeric, bloomed first in a knob of butter for 30 seconds until the kitchen fills with warmth and the spices foam and darken at the edges of the pan. Then the lentils, the tomatoes, a stock cube, enough water to make it loose. Simmered for 25 minutes until the lentils dissolve into a thick golden mass that holds a spoon upright. Red lentils contain more protein per penny than almost any other ingredient on a British supermarket shelf. A 500-gram bag costs around 80p. A Graze protein pot costs £1.49 for 60 grams of mixed plant-based seeds, and a nutritional claim. The lentils do more for your body at a quarter of the price, and they have been doing it since before any brand thought to sell it back to you. District nurses in industrial towns across West Yorkshire were recommending lentil-based dishes to patients with anemia throughout the 1950s, not because it was fashionable, because it was the cheapest reliable source of what those patients needed. The science confirmed it decades later. The nurses already knew, 7 items in, and the same thing keeps surfacing. Not one of these meals required a recipe card after the first time. Not one needed equipment you don't already own. But here is what the cookbook industry, the meal kit companies, and the ready meal manufacturers all have in common. They need you to believe that cooking is complicated, that it requires guidance, equipment, fresh delivery, professional development. They need the knowledge to live in their products rather than in your hands. Because the moment it lives in your hands, you stop needing them. Your Nan didn't need them. She had 6 things on a shelf, and the knowledge her own mother handed across a kitchen table. That knowledge fed families for decades. It asked nothing of the person receiving it, except the willingness to remember it. And when it was no longer passed on, when the kitchen table was replaced by a meal kit, and the larder was replaced by a Deliveroo account, the industry that replaced it made a great deal of money from the gap. Not one of these dishes has a gap in it. Not one needs filling in. The next 7 dishes take the same principle further. Number 11. Scotch broth. Scrag end of lamb into the pot with cold water, brought to the boil, skimmed, then pearl barley, diced onion, 2 carrots, a stick of celery, a small turnip, salt, and white pepper. Lid on. 2 hours on the lowest heat the cooker can produce. 2 hours of doing nothing. The pot does everything. The cartilage and bone give up their collagen. The barley swells. The vegetables surrender their flavor and become part of a broth that does not taste like the sum of its parts. It tastes like more. The smell of it coming through the closed lid is warm and close and slightly sweet from the turnip and deeply savory from the bone, and entirely unlike anything that comes from a packet. The National Food Survey of 1952 recorded scrag end of lamb as one of the most consistently purchased cuts in working-class households across the north of England and Scotland. Low price, high yield, a pound of scrag fed a person for 2 days. A Welsh Women's Institute handbook from 1948 gave one instruction above all others: do not interfere with it. Leave it to cook and do not interfere with it. That is still the only instruction worth following. Number 10. Sausage and bean casserole. 6 good pork sausages from the butcher, not the pale extruded things in supermarket multipacks. Proper sausages with enough fat in them to mean business. Into the pot, on a medium-high heat, turned until the skin colors all the way around. Out onto a plate, an onion softened in the fat they left behind. A tin of chopped tomatoes, a tin of haricot beans drained, a teaspoon of smoked paprika, the sausages back in, nestled into the beans, lid on, 35 minutes on a medium-low heat, then heat off, 20 minutes before the lid comes off. Most people skip this, don't. Those 20 minutes change the dish. The sausages finish in the residual warmth, the beans absorb the paprika and the sausage fat. Everything settles and deepens. You cannot rush this and get the same result. The 1957 survey of working-class nutrition recorded tinned pulses as the single most efficient source of protein per penny available to urban households. Not sold as health food, just sold as food. Nobody was embarrassed to buy them. Nobody needed a recipe developer to tell them what to do with a tin of beans and a handful of sausages. The sausages are the luxury. Everything else costs almost nothing. The pot does the rest. Number 9. Cock-a-leekie. A chicken leg quarter, thigh and drumstick, the cheapest part of the bird, into the pot, with 3 or 4 leeks sliced into thick rounds, a handful of pearl barley, a bay leaf, cold water to cover. Brought to a simmer, lid on, left alone for an hour and a half. The chicken falls from the bone, the leeks soften into the broth until you can no longer tell where leek ends and liquid begins. The barley thickens everything to the consistency of a light stew. The smell coming through the lid is warm and close and deeply savory and faintly sweet from the barley. Traditionally, prunes, 4 or 5 stoned prunes, in for the last 20 minutes. Not as a curiosity, because the sweetness of a prune against savory chicken and leek broth is one of the oldest and most satisfying combinations in British cooking. They round off every sharp edge. They make a complete dish more complete. That was the reason. It was always the reason. Mary, Queen of Scots, is said to have requested this before her execution. True or invented, it does not matter. A dish made in British kitchens for 500 years does not need defending. It needs making. Number 8. Tomato and bread soup. Stale bread is the ingredient, not an afterthought. The main event: an onion softened in butter in the pot, a tin of chopped tomatoes, a tin of cannellini beans, drained, a stock cube in a pint of hot water, poured over, brought to a simmer, 2 or 3 thick slices of stale white bread torn into rough pieces and stirred through, left for 10 minutes until the bread swells and dissolves into the broth and thickens it to something dense and rust-red and intensely savory. In Tuscany, this is ribollita, reboiled, made from the previous day's soup with stale bread added to stretch it. In Lancashire, it had no name. It was what you did with the end of the loaf when the soup needed body. The bread that had been heading for the bin became the substance of the meal. Nothing discarded, everything used twice. A Women's Institute recipe card from 1951 calculated this at under tuppence for a full pot. Britain now throws away 24 million slices of bread every single day. Every one of them was this soup waiting to happen. Number 7. Miner's stew, beef shin with onions. This is the dish the mines ran on. South Yorkshire, South Wales, County Durham. A woman who put shin beef in the pot on a Sunday morning was making dinner for 3 days, and she knew it. Here is why. The shin is almost entirely collagen. Collagen, under long, slow, moist heat, converts to gelatin. That gelatin dissolves into the liquid and thickens it to something no flour or cornstarch can replicate, glossy, trembling, coating a spoon and staying there. The meat that starts tough and seemingly impossible becomes yielding and deeply flavored after 3 hours at the merest breath of heat. Into the pot. Shin diced large, 1 onion, 1 carrot, a tablespoon of tomato paste, a bay leaf, cold water to cover. Lid on. 3 hours, the lowest heat the cooker can produce. Do not stir, do not check, do not open the lid. It is working. In 1960, beef shin cost 4p a pound, when stewing steak cost 2 shillings and 6p. The people who bought shin were not settling for less. They were getting the better meal if they knew how to cook it. They knew. The food scientists confirmed the chemistry 50 years later. The kitchens already knew. Number 6. Potato and onion soup with a boiled egg. 3 large potatoes diced. 2 onions sliced thin. A knob of butter into the pot. Potatoes and onions in together, lid on, low heat. No water yet. Just the butter and the steam the vegetables produce themselves. 10 minutes. The onions soften and go golden at the edges. The potatoes take on the faintest color, and the kitchen fills with a low, sweet smell that a pot of boiling water never produces. Then water to cover, a stock cube, salt. 20 minutes until the potato collapses, half mashed against the side with a spoon. A boiled egg, halved, laid across the top of each bowl. That first 10 minutes without water is the technical secret. It concentrates flavor in a way that boiling everything together from the start never achieves. The onions caramelize at the edges, the potato softens in its own moisture. Everything that follows is richer for those 10 minutes. The egg was not a garnish, it was the protein that made the meal complete. A bowl of potato soup with a halved egg sitting in it is a complete meal. It has always been a complete meal. Higgity soup costs £3.50 a carton and puts a picture of a farmhouse on the label. This costs under 30p and takes 25 minutes and comes out of your own kitchen with your own 2 hands. She called it 6p and 20 minutes. That was always enough. Number 5. Kedgeree. Smoked haddock, undyed, the genuine article, into a shallow pot. Whole milk poured in to come halfway up the fillet. Low heat, never a rolling boil, covered. 8 minutes undisturbed. The milk absorbs the salt and smoke, and the kitchen fills with a smell that means morning in the best possible sense. Warm and savory and slightly sweet and completely unlike anything instant or reheated. The fish flaked from the skin. The milk kept, not poured away. Long grain rice into the pot in the fishy milk, topped up with water. A teaspoon of mild curry powder stirred through before the rice goes in. When the rice has absorbed everything, the flaked haddock folded back through. A handful of frozen peas stirred in off the heat. 2 hard-boiled eggs quartered laid across the top. Grimsby Fish Market pricing records from 1956 show smoked haddock at 4p per quarter pound. Abundant, local, cheap. Scandinavia and Japan have always treated cured fish as a morning staple and are praised for the sophistication of it. Britain arrived at the same answer through necessity rather than tradition, and then quietly abandoned it when a box of cereal became easier. That is not progress. That is a trade-off that was made without most of us agreeing to it. Here is something not in any cookbook and not on any packaging. The larder disappeared from British homes between 1965 and 1985. The cool, unheated, north-facing room that sat at a constant 10 to 14 degrees all year, the room that made one-pot cooking possible, was designed out of domestic architecture entirely, replaced by fitted fridge freezers and built-in units that left no room for a proper pantry. The problem is that the fridge is the wrong temperature for most of what the larder did. Between 3 and 5 degrees, it stops processes that should continue slowly. Cell damage in vegetables, flavor loss in tomatoes, a stew that should cool slowly overnight, deepening, settling, becoming better, chilled rapidly instead, and came out the same as it went in. Your nan's larder at 12 degrees kept onions, potatoes, garlic, bread, hard cheese, stone fruit, and a pot of something left overnight to improve. When the larder disappeared, so did the knowledge of what belonged in it. We threw everything into the fridge and called it safe, then wondered why the food still went off, then threw it away, then went back to the supermarket. That is the system. That is how it was designed to work. Every dish in this countdown improves overnight. Every single one. Time is an ingredient. It always was. Number 4, pan of scouse. Scouse is Liverpool. It is the reason the city's people have the name they have. Older than the docks, older than the terraces, older than any of the songs. Cheap cuts, shin beef, neck of mutton, whatever the butcher had left at closing, into the pot with potatoes, onions, and carrots. Cold water to cover, simmered for hours until everything softened and thickened into a single mass where you could no longer tell where the meat ended and the potato began. Salt, white pepper, nothing else. Blind scouse, no meat at all, was the version poor families ate when even scraps from the butcher were too dear. Potato and onion alone in enough water, with enough time, produced something warm and filling and nourishing. Cost almost nothing. Asked almost nothing. A 1948 survey of household cooking in Merseyside recorded scouse as present in over 80% of working-class homes on at least 2 weeknights. Not a special dish, the default, the thing you made without thinking twice. It reheated perfectly, it improved overnight. Made on Monday, better on Wednesday. 1 pot, 1 bowl, 1 thing to wash. The complete infrastructure of a meal. Number 3, braised oxtail. This is the one restaurants stole. Oxtail joints into the pot with a sliced onion, 2 carrots, a bay leaf, a tablespoon of tomato paste, a splash of cheap red wine, or just water. Enough liquid to come halfway up the meat. Lid on, the lowest heat. 3 hours at minimum. 4 is better. When the lid comes off, the meat has left the bone, the collagen has converted. The liquid is a dark, trembling gloss that coats everything it touches and soaks through bread and stays there. 3p a pound from the butcher in Sheffield in the 1950s. Nobody with money wanted it. £12 a kilo now. Forgotten cut. Heritage ingredient. £14 a portion at the pub. It was never forgotten. It was moved to the back of the cabinet while more expensive cuts sat at the front. The women buying it for 3p were eating better than the people paying £14. They had always been eating better. The restaurant menus just made it official. Number 2, lamb neck stew with root vegetables. Neck of lamb is cartilage and fat and bone in roughly equal proportion. It is also, after 3 hours in a pot with onions, carrots, turnip, and pearl barley, one of the finest things a British kitchen has ever produced. That is not an opinion. That is the result. The neck goes in whole, unchopped, vegetables roughly cut, barley tipped in dry, cold water to cover, a bay leaf, brought to a simmer, skimmed, then left completely alone. 3 hours, nothing interfered with. When it is ready, the meat slides from the bone at a touch. The barley is plump and almost creamy. The turnip has dissolved into the broth. The whole pot trembles when you move it. The smell is warm and deep and close, and like something that has been looked after for hours, because it has. The National Food Survey of 1952 recorded neck of lamb as one of the most consistently purchased cuts in working-class households across the north of England and Scotland. Low price, high yield. A pound fed a person for 2 days. A bowl of the equivalent from a gastropub, listed as braised lamb neck, served with root vegetable broth and barley, costs £12.50. A Welsh Women's Institute handbook from 1948 gave one instruction above all others: do not interfere with it. She didn't write it down. The knowledge lived in her hands. When she was gone, it very nearly went with her. This is why we are here. Number 1, bread and dripping broth. No menu has ever listed this. No food writer has photographed it. No one has given it a French name or placed it on a reclaimed board with a sprig of rosemary. It is simply what happened at the end of the week, when the bones had been simmered, the meat had been eaten, the dripping had been scraped from the basin, and the bread was a day old. The bones from Sunday's joint into a large pot. Cold water to cover, not a rolling boil, the merest possible simmer, the surface barely moving, a bay leaf, an onion cut in half, unpeeled, placed cut side down. The papery skin turns the broth golden. A carrot, salt at the end, never the beginning. 4 hours, the collagen leaves the bone, the minerals dissolve, the marrow gives up everything it has. 4 hours of a pot, sitting quietly on the lowest heat, doing its work without any help, strained through a cloth into a jug, left in the cool overnight. By morning it had set solid, dark and trembling, a pale disc of fat on the surface, scraped off and saved. The jelly beneath was the meal, reheated, poured hot over thick slices of stale bread in a deep bowl, the bread swelling and softening at the center while the crust held at the rim. A shake of white pepper. That was it. That was all of it. The warmth of the bowl in both hands before the spoon was lifted, the steam rising off the bread, the smell of slow-cooked bone and marrow on a cold evening in a small kitchen with the fire still going. The 1947 National Food Survey estimated that dripping was present in 94% of British working-class kitchens. The bones that made this broth were given away by butchers or sold for pennies. The collagen, the minerals, the gelatin, the most concentrated concentrated nutrition in the animal were in the bones. The people who understood that were getting the most valuable part. London wellness cafes now serve bone broth in small cups at £4.50 a portion. Ancient remedy, superfood, nutritional discovery. Your nan made a week's supply from bones the butcher was going to discard. She poured it hot over yesterday's bread. She set the bowl down on the table without a word. She called it Thursday's supper. She never needed to call it anything more than that, because it was simply what you made when you understood that a flame, a pot, a bone, and the knowledge of what to do with all three is all a kitchen has ever needed. That is not nostalgia. That is the record of how things were done. 20 dishes, everyone in a single pot. Everyone cheaper than a supermarket ready meal. Everyone better than anything that comes in a cardboard sleeve. Not one required a recipe after the first time. Not one needed equipment you don't already own. Not one assumed that cooking for yourself is too much trouble. It was never too much trouble. It was always the point. Try one this week. The leek and potato soup. 25 minutes under 30 pence. Tastes of something real. Or the oxtail broth with barley, 3 hours, less than £1, and so far beyond anything a tin can produce that the comparison is not worth making. Tell me in the comments which one you remember. Tell me which one you are making this week. Because this knowledge is still here, it never left. It was only waiting for someone to use it again.